My fellow Americans, tonight I am speaking to you because there is a growing humanitarian and security crisis at our southern border. Every day, Customs and Border Patrol agents encounter thousands of illegal immigrants trying to enter our country. We are out of space to hold them, and we have no way to promptly return them back home to their country. America proudly welcomes millions of lawful immigrants who enrich our society and contribute to our nation. But all Americans are hurt by uncontrolled illegal migration. It strains public resources and drives down jobs and wages. Among those hardest hit are African Americans and Hispanic Americans. Our southern border is a pipeline for vast quantities of illegal drugs, including meth, heroin, cocaine, and fentanyl. Every week, 300 of our citizens are killed by heroin alone, 90% of which floods across from our southern border. More Americans will die from drugs this year than were killed in the entire Vietnam War. In the last 2 years, ICE officers made 266,000 arrests of aliens with criminal records, including those charged or convicted of 100,000 assaults, 30,000 sex crimes, and 4,000 violent killings. Over the years, thousands of Americans have been brutally killed by those who illegally entered our country, and thousands more lives will be lost if we don't act right now. This is a humanitarian crisis, a crisis of the heart and a crisis of the soul. Last month, 20,000 migrant children were illegally brought into the United States, a dramatic increase. These children are used as human pawns by vicious coyotes and ruthless gangs. 1 in 3 women are sexually assaulted on the dangerous trek up through Mexico. Women and children are the biggest victims, by far, of our broken system. This is the tragic reality of illegal immigration on our southern border. This is the cycle of human suffering that I am determined to end. My administration has presented Congress with a detailed proposal to secure the border and stop the criminal gangs, drug smugglers, and human traffickers. It's a tremendous problem. Our proposal was developed by law enforcement professionals and border agents at the Department of Homeland Security. These are the resources they have requested to properly perform their mission and keep America safe. In fact, safer than ever before. The proposal from Homeland Security includes cutting-edge technology for detecting drugs, weapons, illegal contraband, and many other things. We have requested more agents, immigration judges, and bed space to process the sharp rise in unlawful migration fueled by our very strong economy. Our plan also contains an urgent request for humanitarian assistance and medical support. Furthermore, we have asked Congress to close border security loopholes so that illegal immigrant children can be safely and humanely returned back home. Finally, as part of an overall approach to border security, law enforcement professionals have requested $5.7 billion for a physical barrier. At the request of Democrats, it will be a steel barrier rather than a concrete wall. This barrier is absolutely critical to border security. It's also what our professionals at the border want and need. This is just common sense. The border wall would very quickly pay for itself. The cost of illegal drugs exceeds $500 billion a year, vastly more than the $5.7 billion we have requested from Congress. The wall will also be paid for indirectly by the great new trade deal we have made with Mexico. Senator Chuck Schumer, who you will be hearing from later tonight, has repeatedly supported a physical barrier in the past along with many other Democrats. They changed their mind only after I was elected president. Democrats in Congress have refused to acknowledge the crisis, and they have refused to provide our brave border agents with the tools they desperately need to protect our families and our nation. The federal government remains shut down for one reason, and one reason only, because Democrats will not fund border security. My administration is doing everything in our power to help those impacted by the situation. But the only solution is for Democrats to pass a spending bill that defends our borders and reopens the government. This situation could be solved in a 45-minute meeting. I have invited congressional leadership to the White House tomorrow to get this done. Hopefully, we can rise above partisan politics in order to support national security. Some have suggested a barrier is immoral. Then why do wealthy politicians build walls, fences, and gates around their homes? They don't build walls because they hate the people on the outside, but because they love the people on the inside. The only thing that is immoral is the politicians to do nothing and continue to allow more innocent people to be so horribly victimized. America's heart broke the day after Christmas when a young police officer in California was savagely murdered in cold blood by an illegal alien who just came across the border. The life of an American hero was stolen by someone who had no right to be in our country. Day after day, precious lives are cut short by those who have violated our borders. In California, an Air Force veteran was raped, murdered, and beaten to death with a hammer by an illegal alien with a long criminal history. In Georgia, an illegal alien was recently charged with murder for killing, beheading, and dismembering his neighbor. In Maryland, MS-13 gang members who arrived in the United States as unaccompanied minors were arrested and charged last year after viciously stabbing and beating a 16-year-old girl. Over the last several years, I've met with dozens of families whose loved ones were stolen by illegal immigration. I've held the hands of the weeping mothers and embraced the grief-stricken fathers. So sad, so terrible. I will never forget the pain in their eyes, the tremble in their voices, and the sadness gripping their souls. How much more American blood must we shed before Congress does its job? To those who refuse to compromise in the name of border security, I would ask, imagine if it was your child, your husband, or your wife whose life was so cruelly shattered and totally broken. To every member of Congress, pass a bill that ends this crisis. To every citizen, call Congress and tell them to finally, after all of these decades, secure our border. This is a choice between right and wrong, justice and injustice. This is about whether we fulfill our sacred duty to the American citizens we serve. When I took the oath of office, I swore to protect our country, and that is what I will always do. So help me God. Thank you and good night.
Joining us now, we go to the House. House Minority Leader Congressman Kevin McCarthy is with us tonight. You have taken a strong and principled stand, similarly, that this is about life and death. You also are from California. You have seen the impact in your state, most recently with police officers Singh in his particular case.
I saw with Officer Singh and his family. The individual who murdered him was arrested in my county on his way back to Mexico. What's going on and what the president sounded like tonight, I thought he was very strong, very confident, and talked just about the facts. I've watched this president from the moment there could have been possibility of a partial shutdown, try to find a solution. Be here in Washington. Call the individuals in. And when we met last week, Wednesday, before that leadership race, we could tell Nancy Pelosi could do nothing until the speaker race happened. Remember how close that was. Those individuals had to vote present for her to win speaker. But this president has stayed with this. And for all the viewers, they have to understand what he's asking. So you really know who's shutting this down. He's just asking for 10% of what our government gave away to foreign governments last year. The $56 billion they gave away, he just wants $5.6 billion to secure our border. That's why the Democrats are saying that.
Are the Republicans in the House and Senate, I'm not worried about the president. We kind of learned that if he says he's going to pick a fight and he believes in something strongly, in this case he's talking about human lives, about serious violent crimes among a very small percentage because the borders are open, and drug and human trafficking. Are the Republicans in the House and Senate, are they willing to stand behind him for as long as it takes? I think that's what a lot of conservatives want to answer tonight. Congressman.
I think the American public has seen that. Because this isn't just about a party, this is about a country. You know, I was not even in Congress in 2006 when Schumer voted for that. They promised the American public that we would have 700 miles of fencing. It's about time someone stood up and made it happen what they promised the American public they would do. We've watched, and for the Democrats to say there's not a crisis, this is what happens in those meetings, Sean. When Secretary Nielsen goes to provide facts, not something she's made up, but something that's happening along the border, those 17,000 individuals who were stopped along the border that have a criminal record, or those 800 gang members that have been stopped, these are just things that have happened along the southern border. Nancy Pelosi would interrupt her so she could not speak. By the third meeting where Secretary Nielsen finally got a word out, she just started, I don't believe your facts. I don't believe your facts. This is the problem that we have. Democrats do not want to listen to really what's happening. The amount of drugs. The president laid it out. The amount of people who are dying, more than in the Vietnam War. We have a crisis on our border. He's standing up for it. And I will tell you this. Our conference stands with him, and we have resolve to see this through, just what was promised to the American public back in 2006, where Schumer voted for it.
Schumer, Hillary, Obama, many of the Biden, they all voted for it.
The whole group.
It was interesting, the exchange you referred to, and that was between Nancy Pelosi and Secretary Nielsen. And so, I don't believe your facts. And they're not my facts, they're the facts. The secretary, I thought, had a good response.
Exactly.
But the facts that she spoke about in this 2-year period, 4,000 homicides that were committed by illegal aliens, 30,000 sex crimes, 100,000 violent assaults. That's not drugs and that's not human trafficking. And by the way, people on both sides of the border, those that make that arduous journey, the 98% that want what we take for granted, more freedom, more opportunity for themselves, their families, their kids, their grandkids. We're not talking about them. But if they can cross over seeking a job, so too can the criminal element, potential terrorist elements, which also have been stopped at the border.
We've watched that many times before. And what's happening inside these meetings, and I'm thankful the president's calling us back again, because this president wants to find common ground. Watch what he has said. He's moved from a concrete barrier to make sure that they had slats. He's talked about other elements that the Democrats talked about. In those meetings, every Democrat will say they're for border security. So then I ask the question, well, what's your definition of border security? Who in America today believes you could have border security with not some form of a barrier? We've watched what happened in San Diego. El Paso's become one of the safest cities because they have a barrier. We watched in Yuma, Arizona. What's happened is those illegal crossings have dropped more than 90%. We know it works. We know we need it. We know we have to use technology as well. This is where the president has stood strong. He is standing strong for the American public, but more importantly, he's the one person in the room that's trying to find compromise where the Democrats will not move at all.
All right, Kevin McCarthy, the House Minority Leader, thank you for being with us.